On February 28, 2026, Iran fired the Fattah ballistic missile at Israel as part of its opening strike package in Operation True Promise 4. It was not the first time Iran deployed this weapon against Israeli territory. The Fattah appeared in the June 2025 conflict, Iran's largest missile campaign against Israel before this war, and footage from that engagement showed impacts at extreme terminal velocity. Iran claimed successful target strikes. Israel acknowledged impacts but disputed the extent of structural damage. The debate over what the Fattah achieved in June 2025 is analytically less important than the debate over what it means for every air defense system now operating against it. And that debate starts with a classification disagreement that most mainstream coverage collapses into a single word: hypersonic. Iran officially describes the Fattah as a hypersonic missile capable of Mach 13 to 15 at terminal phase. Mach 15 means approximately 11,500 miles per hour, roughly 4 miles per second at sea level equivalent velocity. At that speed, from the moment a radar system detects the incoming warhead to the moment of impact, the window for a defensive response can compress to under 60 seconds. And that assumes early detection. Those numbers come from Iranian official sources and Iranian state media, and they should be understood as such. Iranian official claims, not independently verified Western technical assessments. What Western analysts have confirmed independently is the classification of the weapon itself. Fabian Hinz, a senior analyst at the International Institute for Strategic Studies, who has published extensively on Iran's missile program, describes the Fattah not as a true hypersonic glide vehicle, but as a ballistic missile equipped with a maneuvering reentry vehicle, a MaRV. That distinction is not a technicality. It is the analytically relevant fact that explains why this weapon creates a harder intercept problem than a conventional ballistic missile. And it is more precise than the single word hypersonic used in most coverage. To understand what a maneuvering reentry vehicle means operationally, you need to understand what air defense systems were built to counter. Arrow 3, David's Sling, Patriot PAC-3, and Fattah were all engineered around a shared mathematical assumption. A ballistic missile follows a predictable arc. It launches, it rises through and above the atmosphere, and it descends on a trajectory that is calculable from radar tracking data. The geometry is complex, but it is solvable. Defense systems intercept ballistic missiles by solving that geometry problem. Where will the warhead be at a specific moment in time, and can an interceptor reach that exact point? With sufficient radar data, computing power, and interceptor inventory, this is achievable, which is why Israel, the United States, and coalition partners successfully intercepted the majority of Iranian ballistic missiles in April 2024, October 2024, and June 2025. The Fattah's maneuvering reentry vehicle disrupts this geometry. In the terminal descent phase, the final portion of the missile's flight when it is closing on its target, the warhead is not following the calculated arc. It adjusts its trajectory using control surfaces that remain functional at extreme speeds and temperatures. The adjustment does not need to be large. It needs to be sufficient to move the warhead away from the intercept point that the defensive system calculated before the interceptor arrives. If your interceptor is aimed at where the warhead should be, and the warhead is no longer there, you have missed. That is the operational problem the Fattah introduces. Not that it is impossible to track, but that tracking its ballistic arc no longer tells you with confidence where the warhead will be in its final seconds. The Fattah's propulsion architecture is confirmed by open source analysis. It uses a solid fuel rocket motor for its boost phase, the same design choice Iran made for its K-Bar-Shakan and Sajal missiles for the same operational reason. Solid fuel means the missile sits on its launcher ready to fire, with no liquid fueling process visible to satellite surveillance before launch. The decision window for detecting pre-launch preparations shrinks from hours to minutes. After boost phase, the warhead separates and enters its descent trajectory, with the maneuvering reentry vehicle active in the terminal phase. It is this terminal maneuvering window, not the cruise phase, not the boost phase, that Hinz and the IISS identified as the operationally significant distinction from a conventional ballistic missile. Iran's state media has framed the Fattah's flight profile as a hypersonic glide vehicle that skips through the upper atmosphere. The technical literature from IISS, the War Zone, and CSIS does not support the hypersonic glide vehicle classification. The accurate description, based on open-source Western technical analysis, a quasi-ballistic missile with a maneuvering terminal reentry vehicle operating at high speed. That is a harder intercept problem than a conventional ballistic missile. It is a different intercept problem from a true hypersonic glide vehicle. Both distinctions matter for understanding what defense systems can and cannot do against it. Now let's look at each layer of Israel's defense architecture and what the Fattah's terminal maneuvering means for each system specifically. Iron Dome is the system most visible in international coverage. The interceptors firing at rockets, the trails across the night sky over Israeli cities. Iron Dome was designed for short-range rockets and artillery projectiles, threats traveling at speeds measured in hundreds of meters per second. It has no intercept architecture against ballistic missiles or quasi-ballistic high-speed threats. Iron Dome's radar and interceptors were not built for this problem, and they are not relevant to the Fattah threat. David's Sling handles medium to long-range ballistic missiles and large-caliber rockets, a higher threat tier than Iron Dome. Its stunner interceptor was designed around the intercept geometry of ballistic missiles with predictable arcs. Against a terminal maneuvering reentry vehicle operating at hypersonic terminal velocities, David's Sling faces the same fundamental geometry problem. The intercept calculation changes if the warhead changes direction in its final seconds. Arrow 2 provides atmospheric intercept capability for ballistic missiles in their terminal descent phase. Arrow 3 operates above the atmosphere, exo-atmospheric intercept of ballistic missiles before they re-enter. Arrow 3 is Israel's most relevant system for the Fattah threat and has performed intercepts against Iranian ballistic missiles in prior engagements, confirmed by Israeli Defense Forces statements. But Arrow 3's exo-atmospheric intercept window is specifically designed for non-maneuvering warheads. If the Fattah's maneuvering capability is active during or before the exo-atmospheric window, the intercept geometry changes. If the maneuvering is concentrated in the terminal atmospheric phase, after Arrow 3's optimal engagement window, then Arrow 2 and David's Sling are the systems facing the harder version of the problem. That is the layered defense gap the Fattah was designed to exploit, maneuvering at the phase of flight that falls between or after optimal intercept windows. There's a confirmed physical phenomenon that compounds the tracking challenge at hypersonic speeds: plasma blackout. When an object travels at speeds above approximately Mach 5 through the atmosphere, the friction between the vehicle and air molecules generates a layer of ionized plasma around the surface. This plasma layer can absorb and scatter radar waves. The result is intermittent degradation of radar tracking, periods where the return signal weakens or disappears, then reappears as the plasma sheath fluctuates. This is not absolute invisibility. It is degradation of the tracking picture at exactly the phase of flight when defensive systems need the most precise tracking data to calculate an intercept solution. Space-based infrared sensors can detect the heat signature of a hypersonic re-entry vehicle through the plasma, but the time between infrared detection and impact compresses dramatically compared to conventional ballistic missile warning timelines. The combination of reduced radar fidelity during terminal phase and compressed warning timelines is the confirmed physical basis for why the Fattah creates a harder defensive problem, separate from and in addition to the maneuvering capability. The cost asymmetry matters as much as the technical problem, and it is confirmed by operational data from the U.S. Navy's recent experience in the Red Sea. Each Arrow 3 interceptor costs approximately $3.5 million per unit. Each Patriot PAC-3 interceptor costs approximately $4 million. THAAD interceptors cost approximately $10 million each. Production cost estimates for Iranian solid-fuel ballistic missiles, including the Fattah class, are significantly lower, in the low hundreds of thousands to low single-digit millions per unit, depending on the system. This cost ratio, where the interceptor is consistently more expensive than the missile it is designed to stop, creates a structural problem for sustained defense operations that the Red Sea campaign made visible. During the Houthi campaign from 2023 to 2025, U.S. Navy destroyers expended significant inventories of interceptors against much cheaper drone and missile threats. The USS Carney expended an extraordinary volume of interceptors in a single week of that campaign, according to defense reporting that drew direct attention to the cost imbalance. The same cost asymmetry applies to every Fattah intercept attempt, with the added variable that the maneuvering terminal phase increases the number of shots required per kill by reducing single-shot kill probability. More shots per intercept means faster depletion of interceptor inventories. Iran's decision to deploy the Fattah in combat conditions on February 28th was not only military, it was a technology demonstration with a target audience that extends beyond Israel. Every military planner in every country that operates under the American defensive umbrella is now working with confirmed operational data on what a quasi-ballistic maneuvering re-entry vehicle does when fired in a real war, at real targets, against real layered defense systems. Russia has developed and deployed the Kinjal, which Moscow describes as a hypersonic missile, but Western analysts classify as an air-launched ballistic missile. Similar classification issues to the Fattah, different propulsion and launch platform. Russia's Zircon is a scramjet-powered hypersonic cruise missile, a different technical category, confirmed operational. China's DFZF is a true hypersonic glide vehicle mounted on a ballistic missile booster, the most technically sophisticated of the three programs. All three programs were theoretical strategic threats before operational use. Iran's operational deployment of the Fattah in two confirmed combat campaigns, June 2025 and February 2026, provides real-world performance data on a maneuvering high-speed re-entry vehicle that no laboratory test can fully replicate. What that data shows, from publicly available battle damage assessments, is that some Fattah missiles impacted their target areas in June 2025. Israel acknowledged impacts. Iran claimed structural damage at military sites. Israel disputed the extent. The confirmed fact is impact, not full interception of every unit fired. U.S. congressional testimony on hypersonic defense gaps provides the most authoritative public framing of where American and allied defense architecture currently stands against maneuvering hypersonic and quasi-hypersonic threats. In 2024, testimony before the Senate Armed Services Committee, U.S. Navy leadership described hypersonic anti-ship threats as a developmental priority, meaning the intercept solution is under development, not fielded. The Missile Defense Agency has identified several candidate technologies for hypersonic defense. Directed energy weapons, high-powered lasers capable of maintaining beam focus on a fast-maneuvering target long enough to cause structural failure, represent one development pathway. The physics challenge, maintaining beam focus on a target surrounded by a plasma sheath, at hypersonic closing velocities, over engagement distances measured in kilometers. Hypervelocity projectiles fired from electromagnetic railguns represent another candidate, matching the speed regime of the incoming threat. The engineering challenge, railgun barrel wear, power requirements, and guidance of the projectile against a maneuvering target. Advanced AI-assisted battle management systems that can predict maneuvering patterns faster than current computing architectures represent the third candidate. None of these systems has a confirmed operational deployment date. The honest summary from the public record: no current operationally deployed system has a confirmed intercept record against a maneuvering reentry vehicle operating at hypersonic terminal velocities. Arrow 3 has confirmed intercepts against non-maneuvering Iranian ballistic missiles. The maneuvering terminal phase is the unconfirmed intercept problem. That is, the accurate statement is significantly more precise than no defense system on Earth can stop it, and significantly more useful for understanding the actual defensive gap. The Fattah's classification matters beyond the technical literature for one practical reason. If it is a maneuvering reentry vehicle on a ballistic trajectory, the IISS classification, then the intercept problem is a terminal phase geometry problem solvable in principle by sufficiently advanced kinetic interceptors or directed energy. If it were a true hypersonic glide vehicle operating at sustained Mach 5+ speeds throughout its flight on a flat atmospheric trajectory, the Chinese DFZF model, the intercept problem would be categorically harder because the engagement timeline and geometry are fundamentally different from ballistic trajectories. Iran's Fattah is not a DFZF. Iran's Fattah is not Russia's Zircon. It is a ballistic missile with a maneuvering warhead that operates at high speed in its terminal phase. That is what makes it harder to intercept than conventional ballistic missiles. That is what makes it different from the systems that Arrow 3 has a confirmed track record against. And that is why the distinction matters. The gap is real, the gap is confirmed, and the gap does not require exaggeration to be taken seriously. The proliferation dimension of Iran's operational deployment is the longer-term strategic question. Iran's decision to use the Fattah in 2 confirmed combat campaigns answers the question of whether the system is operational. Yes, confirmed. It answers the question of whether Iran is willing to use it under real war conditions. Yes, confirmed. What it does not answer publicly is the inventory question. How many Fattah-class missiles does Iran currently possess? What is the production rate? And whether the maneuvering re-entry vehicle technology has been shared with proxy forces or partner states. Iranian proxy forces, Hezbollah, Iraqi militia factions, the Houthis, have received increasingly sophisticated weapon systems from Iran over the past decade. None of them has yet demonstrated a maneuvering re-entry vehicle capability. Whether that changes as this conflict develops is the proliferation question that defense planners in every Gulf state, in Israel, and in NATO headquarters are working actively. The technology itself, maneuvering re-entry vehicles on ballistic boosters, is not uniquely Iranian. Multiple countries possess or are developing variants of the same concept. Iran's operational deployment compresses the timeline for every other program because it provides confirmation that the technology works under real combat conditions. What February 28, 2026 confirmed in the Fattah's operational record is specific and limited, and it is worth being precise about both what was confirmed and what was not. Confirmed. The Fattah was deployed in a combat campaign against Israeli territory. Confirmed. Some Fattah missiles reached Israeli territory and impacted in June 2025, acknowledged by Israeli officials. Confirmed. Iran's defense establishment has been developing and iterating on solid-fuel quasi-ballistic maneuvering systems across multiple programs since at least 2015. Confirmed. The maneuvering terminal reentry phase creates a harder intercept geometry problem than conventional ballistic missiles, per IISS and the war zone. Confirmed. No operationally deployed system has a public confirmed intercept record, specifically against a maneuvering reentry vehicle at hypersonic terminal velocity. Not confirmed. The Mach 13-15 speed range. This is Iran's official claim, not independently verified by Western technical assessment. Not confirmed. That Arrow 3 cannot intercept the Fattah. Arrow 3 has confirmed intercepts against non-maneuvering Iranian ballistic missiles. Its performance against the Fattah's specific terminal maneuvering profile has not been confirmed publicly in either direction. Not confirmed. Inventory numbers, production rates, or any proxy transfer of the maneuvering reentry vehicle technology. Those boundaries are not a limitation of what is important to report. They are the boundaries between confirmed analysis and speculation. And in a conflict where the stakes are this high, that distinction is the only thing that separates accurate strategic assessment from noise.